Douglas Murray's latest book has come out, The Strange Death of Europe, and I think there are methodological and ethical problems with this book. And while praise is due about writing energy, provocativeness, we shouldn't be too ready to accept the intellectual framing and the evidence that the book provides that masquerades as sober analysis. But it is, in fact, a polemic shaped by selective reasoning, emotional manipulation, and essential generalization. Murray's signature move is to combine compelling anecdote with sweeping assumptions, and the powerful and engaging prose, the energetic reporting, misses the fact that Murray's travels are not an honest ethnography, but a stage drama in which each scene serves a prior conviction. He visits Lesbos and Lampedusa, not to learn or to challenge his assumptions, but to reinforce them. His dealing with migrants and his scorn for humanitarian volunteers, his contradictory, composed compassion laced with contempt, is less nuanced than it is sleight of hand. It permits Murray to deflect accusations of bigotry while pressing a narrative in which immigrants are passive vectors of decline and Europeans their exhausted hosts. Murray's core claim, Europe is committing suicide, fails to deal with the realities, much as he fails to deal with the realities of the Israeli attack on Gaza. This idea of Europe committing suicide is not just a metaphor; it's moral judgment dressed in the pressing energy of the age. It's just not a policy problem, but a civilizational pathology. It permits no moderation, no policy compromise, only urgent revival or irreversible collapse. The invocation of the camp of the saints, even with a mild disclaimer, reveals the extreme ideological soil in which Murray's argument is planted. The novel is not merely racist, but utterly dehumanizing. For Murray to flirt with its thesis and suggest it's coming true is not an exercise in provocation, but in intellectual provocation by cowardice. It's some critics have called what Murray presents a bold argument, but it's bold in the same way of a demagogue. It's confident, theatrical, and willing to distort the truth to rouse the mob. And Murray's comparative historicism, why must we atone for colonialism, but not but not Turkish or Arab conquests, is rhetorically seductive but analytically shallow. Europe harps on its past sins, but it fails to point out this is largely because Europe invented the modern norms of human rights, democracy, and liberalism against which Murray now judges it. There's no contradiction in holding Europe to its own ethical standards, but at the same time, those standards were established by Europe. Murray claims that secularism and immigration have sapped Europe's will to live. It's anthropomorphic nonsense. It's like sort of parading Mickey Mouse as some sort of analysis of the fall of the Roman Empire. Civilizations do not have libidos. The supposed tiredness of Europe is not measurable, and the reviewers who have looked at this book before me, I think will be drawing the same sort of conclusions, or I hope they'll be drawing the same conclusions. This book is twaddle. But twaddle that is deeply readable and deeply persuasive, but it is nevertheless twaddle. And there's deep irony in Murray's position. While accusing liberals of guilt-ridden self-flagellation, he himself peddles this paranoid form of reverse victimhood that is arguably just as emotionally incontinent. I think Murray's discussion of Islam is perhaps the most valuable contribution. He rightly notes that that it's about correlation and insinuation that Muslim conservatism or population growth equates with incompatibility. But this ignores the diversity within Muslim populations and dismisses the empirical evidence on assimilation, which is real if complex. And I think there is a necessary point that terrorism, while shocking and symbolic, is statistically insignificant compared to other social harms. To elevate terrorism into a primary civilizational threat is a classic populist maneuver. And Murray often treats Muslim as an immutable identity, whereas in fact religion, like culture, is always mediated by context, class, politics and generation. He invokes Islam less as a theology than as a spectre, and this essentialism degrades public debate and risks stoking division under the guise of candor. Is Murray an emblem, a star of the neoconservative movement? Well, yes, of course he is, but that doesn't that doesn't absolve him of the duty to look at his texts analytically and honestly, or to present himself simply as a polemic, as a YouTube revolutionary. And the aesthetic of Western decline, I think, is something that needs to be explored. The moral panic that accompanies it is also interesting. Murray doesn't offer a program but a mood, and this is YouTube populism draped in Oxford prose. I know, because I do the same. It speaks not to the intellect but to the anxieties of a declining political class, unsure of how to reconcile pluralism with sovereignty. And Murray has already peddled the same sort of stuff. He's only recently produced a book about Israel and about the Gaza conquest, and again, that is also specious. Readers may disagree passionately with what he does, but I don't think they will regret reading his books. His books are provocative, interesting. They don't illuminate as much as inflame. And read what you can. Just don't mistake it for scholarship. It's a sermon for the disenchanted, and not an analysis for the prudent. And as I say, it's very similar to the sort of stuff. In fact, let's have a look at what he wrote earlier, because I think that throws it into context. If you compare the thing he's published now with the other one on democracies and death cults, it's a gripping book. It's a bracing book. It's a book, dare I say, of monumental conviction. But is it scholarship, or is it theatre dressed in a scholar's robes? Is it right? No. Anyone familiar with the madness of crowds or the strange death of Europe will find Murray's new work thematically unchanged. There's the same doomsday clarity, the same cultural pessimism, the same formula, a confident tone, a digestible thesis, an appeal to the West in decline, under siege from its own masochism, from external threats, particularly Islamist extremism. What is new is the immediacy. This book is born of October the 7th, 2023, and is written as though every moment since is part of a binary war between civilization and barbarism. Murray is captivating. On screen he is electric, articulate, composed and unflappable. He has presence. He speaks as though reason itself were pacing beside him, but the charm conceals a sleight of hand. For while the rhetoric is cool, the method is hot, emotional, selective, purposeful, and he cherry-picks facts not to illuminate but to persuade. That's allowed, of course. It's what all polemicists do, but it's not academic practice, and nor must we confuse the two. And let's not deny that the book does well. His recounting of the October the 7th massacres is meticulous and deeply affecting. He interviews Israeli survivors, and this gives the event solemnity and the horror it deserves. His brief forays into the history of anti-Semitism are lucid and often moving, and he rightly highlights hypocrisies in Western responses, the removal of hostage posters, the silence of progressive voices in the face of Jewish suffering. He's right, too, to ask whether Hamas is treated with undue leniency by Western intellectuals. And when he describes the cultural atmosphere of some Western campuses, one does see the thuggish, reactionary energy that masquerades as virtue. But what is missing, and this is what makes the book troubling, not a single Palestinian speaks with their own voice. Not one is granted the kind of humanity he bestows upon Israeli victims. Gaza, if it appears, is a backdrop where shattered, anonymous, voiceless, which is shattered and anonymous voices, and I was going to say we're voiceless individuals, but there are no individuals. The deaths of 42,000 people in Palestine are statistics. The trauma, the rage, the desperation are implied to be irrational and inexplicable, and that is Murray's greatest imaginative failure, to see a people only through the prism of their enemy's eyes. Even Netanyahu is granted diplomatic invisibility. There's no mention of the domestic fury at his premiership, his judicial reforms, or the obvious accusation that he prolonged the war to evade legal accountability. When discussing the Yom Kippur War inquiry in 1993, Murray fails to note that Netanyahu has blocked any equivalent investigation in 2023. This is not accidental. Murray's project is ideological. He doesn't hide it. He's not writing to explore, he's writing to assert. His narrative is simple: good versus evil, West versus Islamism, civilization versus death cult, and his refusal to complicate that binary vision makes the work seductive but brittle. He reduces psychoanalytic complexity to psychopolitical dogma. He's become a culture war entrepreneur, brilliant at sales, shoddy on ethics. Solzhenitsyn once warned against believing that the world's evils were out there rather than within. Murray ignores that. In his books, the evils are conveniently external. Campus radicals, gender theorists, Gazan terrorists. But as any real student of history knows, the line between good and evil doesn't run between peoples. It runs through every heart. This is one of the principles of the Kabbalah, and Murray would do well to check out his understanding of the Zohar. Every heart, even the conservative heart, the liberal heart, the Israeli heart, the Palestinian heart, these are part of the wider narrative. On Democracies and Death Cults is compelling, eloquent, and dangerously partial. It's not a work of serious scholarship, though it wears that costume convincingly. It's an opinion piece, forceful, fascinating, but fragile. And I was going to say facetious, but it's not that. It's just opinionated. And we may admire the performer, I do, but we mustn't mistake the show for the truth.